The airplane wheels touched the runway just after midnight, and my chest felt so tight with excitement that I could barely stay in my seat. I pressed my forehead against the window and smiled at the city lights below me. "Welcome home," the flight attendant said while people grabbed their bags. "Thanks," I replied. "I've waited 5 years for this." I carried 2 heavy suitcases through the airport. One held clothes and work papers. The other was filled with gifts for Emily. A silver necklace. Imported makeup. A handwritten anniversary letter. I had spent months planning every detail of tonight. While I waited for my taxi, I checked my phone again. No messages from Emily. Good, I thought. The surprise is still safe. The driver loaded my bags into the trunk and glanced at me through the mirror. "Business trip?" "No," I said with a grin. "I'm finally coming home." That smile tells me somebody important is waiting. My wife. He laughed softly. "Then tonight is special." I looked out the window during the ride and remembered the first winter after I moved overseas. I worked 16-hour shifts at a shipping company, sleeping in a tiny apartment with leaking pipes. Every paycheck I sent home to Emily. Sometimes she cried during our calls. "I miss you," she would whisper. "I'm doing this for us," I always answered. "One day we'll have the house you deserve." Back then, Jason used to join our video call sometimes. "Don't worry, brother," he told me once. "I'll look after Emily while you're gone." I trusted him completely. Jason and I had grown up together. We shared school lunches when we were kids. He stood beside me at my wedding. I even gave him a key to my house before leaving the country. The taxi stopped at a red light, and I smiled while touching the small gift box in my pocket. Emily loved surprises. I imagined her running into my arms the moment she saw me. Maybe she would cry. Maybe we would stay awake until sunrise talking about our future together. The driver parked outside my house 30 minutes later. "Good luck," he said. "Thanks." The neighborhood looked exactly the same. Quiet streets. Dark windows. Cold night air. My heart pounded harder with every step toward the front door. I unlocked it carefully and entered without making noise. "Emily?" I whispered. No answer. I placed the suitcases beside the couch and noticed something strange immediately. A man's shoes sat near the stairs. I frowned. Maybe Jason visited earlier, I thought. Maybe he forgot them. Then I heard a muffled laugh upstairs. My stomach tightened. Another sound followed. A man's voice. I froze beside the staircase, trying to convince myself there was a reasonable explanation. Maybe Jason came over because Emily was scared to stay alone tonight. Maybe they were watching television. Maybe I was overthinking everything after a long flight. But deep inside, fear already crawled through my chest. I climbed the stairs slowly. Every step felt heavier than the last. Then I heard Emily laugh again. Not her polite laugh. Not her nervous laugh. It was the soft laugh she only used with me. My hands started shaking. I reached the bedroom door and saw light beneath it. For a moment I almost turned around. Part of me wanted to stay ignorant forever instead of facing whatever waited inside that room. Then Jason spoke. "You know he still believes we're innocent," he said. Emily laughed quietly. "He's too trusting." My breathing stopped. I pushed the door open. The world around me shattered instantly. Emily sat in my bed with the blanket wrapped around her body. Jason sat beside her, his arm around her shoulders. Their faces turned pale the second they saw me standing there. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The anniversary gift slipped from my hand and hit the floor. Jason stood up first. "Listen, man." I couldn't hear the rest. I stared at Emily's face, searching for guilt, regret, anything that could wake me from the nightmare. Instead, I saw panic and annoyance fighting inside her eyes. Jason opened his mouth again, probably preparing another lie, but I raised my hand before he could speak. My voice came out weak, broken, and completely unfamiliar to me. 5 years of sacrifice, loneliness, overtime, and loyalty crashed down on me in one horrifying second. And as I stared at the two people I trusted most, I realized I had just come home to strangers. I could barely breathe. The bedroom felt smaller every second, like the walls were crushing me alive. My hands trembled so badly that I clenched them into fists just to stop myself from falling apart. Emily climbed out of bed quickly. "Please let me explain." "Explain what?" I asked. "Explain why my best friend is in my bed?" Jason raised his hands slowly. "Calm down, man." I stared at him in disbelief. "You're telling me to calm down?" "Yelling won't fix this," he muttered. I laughed, but the sound that came out of me felt broken. "Fix this? You think this can be fixed?" Emily started crying. "I never wanted you to find out like this." Those words hit me harder than anything else. Not denial. Not regret. Just shame because she got caught. I looked at her and whispered, "How long?" She covered her face. "Please?" "How long?" I shouted. Jason answered before she could. "Over a year." For a second I honestly thought I misheard him. "A year?" My voice cracked. "You've been sleeping with my wife for a year?" "It wasn't planned," Emily cried. "It just happened slowly." I felt rage explode inside my chest so violently that I stepped toward Jason without thinking. He instantly backed away. "Don't touch me," he warned. "Touch you?" I yelled. "I treated you like my brother. You were never here." Emily screamed suddenly. The room fell silent. Tears streamed down her face while she pointed at me. "You left me alone for years. I left to build our future. You left me by myself every night. I worked myself half to death for you. I didn't need money," she cried. "I needed my husband." My heart twisted painfully. "You think I enjoyed being overseas?" I asked quietly. "You think I liked sleeping in factories and missing birthdays and anniversaries?" Emily looked away. I kept talking because once the pain started coming out, I couldn't stop it. "I ate instant noodles for months so I could send you extra money. I worked Christmas shifts while you celebrated with family. Every lonely night, I told myself it would be worth it because I had you waiting for me." "I was lonely too," she whispered. "So you slept with him?" Jason crossed his arms. "This isn't all on her." I turned toward him slowly. "You really want to talk right now?" He swallowed hard but nodded anyway. "You were gone all the time. She needed someone." "She needed someone?" I repeated. "So you volunteered?" "It wasn't supposed to happen. But it did." Nobody answered. I looked around the bedroom at the pictures hanging on the wall. Wedding photos. Smiling memories. Fake happiness frozen inside frames. Suddenly I remembered the night before my flight overseas. Emily held my hand and whispered, "Promise me we'll survive this." "I promise," I told her back then. Now that same woman couldn't even look me in the eye. I picked up the anniversary letter from the floor. The paper had bent from the fall. Emily noticed it immediately. "What is that? Does it matter?" Tears rolled down her cheeks harder. "I still love you," she whispered. I stared at her like she was a stranger. "You don't destroy people you love." Jason sighed impatiently. "Look, maybe everybody should calm down and talk tomorrow." I snapped. I grabbed him by the shirt and slammed him against the wall. "You don't get to tell me what to do in my own house." Emily screamed. "Stop it." Jason shoved me back hard. I said, "Calm down." For one dangerous second, I wanted to hit him until I couldn't feel my hands anymore. But then I saw Emily crying between us and something inside me collapsed completely. Not anger. Not hatred. Just emptiness. I stepped backward slowly. "I can't do this." Emily reached toward me. "Please don't leave." I laughed bitterly. "You already left me a long time ago." I walked downstairs while she begged me to stay. Jason didn't follow. Maybe he knew there was nothing left to say. At the front door, Emily grabbed my arm. "Please listen to me." I pulled away gently. "Every night I missed you, I stayed loyal. Remember that." Then I walked outside. The cold air hit my face, but it didn't help. Nothing helped. I drove for hours without knowing where I was going. Empty streets blurred together while memories replayed endlessly inside my head. Emily dancing barefoot in the kitchen. Jason laughing beside me during our wedding. Late-night phone calls where she whispered, "Come home soon." Every memory felt poison now. Around sunrise, I parked near a gas station and rested my head against the steering wheel. My chest hurt so badly it felt physical. 5 years. 5 years of sacrifice. 5 years of trust. And the entire life I fought to protect had been collapsing behind my back while I was too blind to see it. I arrived at my parents' house just after sunrise looking like a ghost. My mother opened the door and immediately grabbed my face. "What happened to you?" I tried to speak but nothing came out. My father appeared behind her. His expression hardened instantly. "Let him inside first." The moment I sat on the couch, my entire body collapsed from exhaustion. I hadn't slept all night. My eyes burned. My chest still felt hollow. Mom sat beside me carefully. "Where's Emily?" I stared at the floor. "She cheated on me." The silence afterward felt endless. My mother covered her mouth. "No." "With Jason," I whispered. Dad cursed quietly under his breath and walked toward the kitchen. A minute later, he returned with a glass of water and handed it to me. "When did you find out?" he asked. "Last night." Mom hugged me tightly. "I'm so sorry." I closed my eyes while she held me and suddenly I felt 10 years younger. Broken. Lost. Humiliated. Dad sat across from me with his arms crossed. Listen carefully to me. What they did is disgusting, but don't destroy yourself over people with weak character. I laughed bitterly. Easy for you to say. No, he replied firmly. I know betrayal better than you think. I looked at him, surprised. He sighed. When I was younger, one of my closest friends stole money from me during a business deal. People disappoint you. That's life. This is different. I know, he said quietly. But pain still follows the same rule. Either it destroys you or it changes you. Mom glared at him. Can you stop sounding like a military commander for 1 minute? Your son is suffering. I'm trying to help him survive. I rubbed my face tiredly. I keep replaying everything in my head. Every conversation. Every memory. Mom squeezed my shoulder gently. You loved her honestly. Don't blame yourself for that. But I already did. I remembered all the little moments I ignored over the years. Emily answering calls in another room. Jason visiting the house more often. Cancelled video calls. Her growing distance. At the time, I explained everything away because love made me stupid. My phone buzzed suddenly on the table. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something told me to answer. Hello. A nervous female voice spoke softly. Is this you? Yes. Who is this? It's Olivia. Emily's friend. I stood up immediately and walked toward the hallway. Why are you calling me? I needed to tell you the truth. My stomach tightened. What truth? She hesitated for several seconds. People suspected something was happening between Emily and Jason months ago. The words hit me like another punch to the chest. Who knew? I didn't know everything, she said quickly. But people talked. People? I repeated angrily. What people? Some of Emily's friends. Jason's co-workers. They noticed how close they were becoming. I leaned against the wall, feeling dizzy. Olivia continued carefully. Emily complained about your absence constantly. I was working for her. I know, she whispered. But she kept saying she felt abandoned. I closed my eyes painfully. She started depending on Jason emotionally first, Olivia continued. Then everything crossed the line. I forced myself to ask the question I feared most. How long did you know? A few months. And nobody told me? I wanted to, she cried softly. I swear I wanted to. I laughed bitterly into the phone. Amazing. There's something else. My chest tightened again. What now? She hesitated. Jason mocked you sometimes. I stopped breathing. What? He joked that you were too blinded by love to notice anything. My fingers tightened around the phone so hard they hurt. He said you trusted him like an idiot, Olivia whispered. Something cold settled inside me then. Not heartbreak. Not rage. Something darker. I thanked Olivia quietly and ended the call. When I returned to the living room, Dad immediately noticed my face. What happened? I sat down slowly. Everybody knew except me. Mom looked heartbroken. Dad nodded once like he expected it. That's usually how betrayal works, he said. I stared at the ceiling silently while memories replayed again inside my mind. Jason helping me pack before my flight overseas. Emily crying at the airport. Birthday calls. Anniversary messages. Every moment felt fake now. I wondered how many times they laughed together after hanging up on me. How many lies I swallowed without question. How many signs I ignored because I loved too deeply. By evening, exhaustion finally hit me harder than anger. I sat alone in my childhood bedroom staring at old photographs on the wall. Then I quietly whispered words I never imagined saying. I'm done begging people to love me. And for the first time since opening that bedroom door, I felt something inside me begin to change. 3 days after I left the house, Emily appeared at my parents' front door crying so hard she could barely speak. My mother opened the door first. Please, Emily begged. I need to talk to him. Mom looked toward me silently. Part of me wanted to tell her to leave immediately. Another part still remembered the woman I once loved. Let her in, I said quietly. Emily walked inside carefully, clutching her purse with trembling hands. Her eyes were swollen from crying. I've been calling you non-stop, she whispered. I know. Why didn't you answer? Because there's nothing left to say. She flinched like I slapped her. Dad stood from his chair. I'll give you 2 privacy. Mom followed him upstairs reluctantly. The moment we were alone, Emily burst into tears again. I made a horrible mistake. I stayed silent. I hate myself for what I did, she continued. Please believe me. You hated yourself after getting caught. That's not true. Then why did the affair continue for over a year? Emily covered her face. I was weak. I stared at her calmly, surprising even myself. Just days ago, seeing her cry would have destroyed me. Now I mostly felt exhausted. You didn't accidentally betray me for a year, I said. You made daily choices. I know, she whispered. My phone buzzed on the table beside me. A message from Daniel. Daniel was my cousin and a financial advisor. The second he learned what happened, he immediately warned me to protect everything legally before emotions made things worse. I opened the message quickly. Lawyer appointment confirmed tomorrow morning. Emily noticed my expression. What was that? Nothing important. Then realization crossed her face. You're filing for divorce? I looked directly into her eyes. Yes. Her breathing became shaky again. No, please don't do this. You already did this. We can fix it. How? I'll cut Jason out of my life completely. I laughed bitterly. You should have done that before sleeping with him. Emily started crying harder. I still love you. Those words barely affected me anymore. Later that afternoon, I met Daniel at his office downtown. He handed me several folders. Separate your accounts immediately. Cancel shared access cards. Protect your property before this becomes ugly. It already is ugly. He nodded sympathetically. Then stopped thinking emotionally. I rubbed my tired eyes. I never imagined my marriage ending like this. Nobody does. While we reviewed documents, Daniel suddenly frowned at his phone. What? You're not going to like this. He turned the screen toward me. A photo from social media showed Jason sitting at a restaurant with friends, smiling confidently with his arm around Emily's shoulders. The caption read, "Sometimes the strongest man wins." My chest burned instantly. That bastard, Daniel muttered. But strangely, my anger faded almost as quickly as it appeared. Because for the first time, I truly saw Jason clearly. Not as my brother. Not as my friend. Just a selfish man proud of stealing another person's life. That night, Emily called me repeatedly until I finally answered. Why are you with him publicly already? I asked immediately. It's not what you think. Then explain the photo. Silence. I laughed coldly. Exactly. Her voice cracked. Jason's been acting different lately. What does that mean? He keeps saying things that make me uncomfortable. Like what? He said now that you're gone, I should stop crying and focus on him. I leaned back in my chair quietly. Emily continued softly. He said you were weak for leaving the house. That's who he really is. I didn't realize before. You didn't want to realize. Another painful silence filled the call. Finally she whispered, Can I come see you tomorrow? Against my better judgment, I agreed. The next evening, Emily sat across from me at a small park near my parents' neighborhood. Wind moved gently through the trees while she stared at me with red, exhausted eyes. I miss you, she whispered. I looked away toward the empty playground nearby. You missed the version of me that sacrificed everything for you. That's not fair. No. I asked quietly. Then answer something honestly. She nodded weakly. I forced myself to ask the question destroying my mind every night. Did you ever love me or did you only love what I gave you? Emily froze completely. Tears formed instantly in her eyes. But she said nothing. That silence cut deeper than the affair itself. Because somewhere inside me I already knew the answer. I stood up slowly. Emily grabbed my hand desperately. Please don't walk away. I looked down at our wedding ring still resting on my finger. For years, that ring represented loyalty, sacrifice, trust, and forever. Now it felt heavy and meaningless. Emily whispered through tears, I never wanted to lose you. But you did lose me. Carefully, I removed the ring from my finger. Emily broke down crying the moment she saw it resting in my palm. I'm sorry, she sobbed. I closed my hand around the ring tightly before slipping it into my pocket. Then I walked away while Emily cried behind me, and for the first time since returning home, I didn't look back. The divorce process moved forward quietly, but inside me, everything still felt destroyed. Most mornings I stayed in bed staring at the ceiling for hours. My phone rang constantly, yet I ignored almost everyone. Friends texted. Relatives checked on me. Even Mom knocked on my bedroom door several times a day. You need to eat something, she said one afternoon. I'm not hungry. You can't keep living like this. I laughed weakly from beneath the blanket. I'm barely living at all. After she left, silence filled the room again. That silence became dangerous. Because every quiet moment allowed memories to return. Emily smiling while decorating our first apartment. Jason raising a glass during our wedding toast. Late-night calls where Emily whispered, "I'm proud of you." Sometimes I caught myself wondering if any part of our marriage had been real. One night around 2 in the morning, I sat alone in the dark holding my phone. Emily's contact still remained in my favorites list. My thumb hovered over her name. I wanted to hear her voice desperately. Not because I forgave her. Not because I trusted her. I just missed the woman I thought existed. The phone rang once before I panicked and ended the call immediately. I threw the phone across the couch and covered my face with both hands. "What are you doing to yourself?" I whispered. The next morning, Dad entered my room without knocking. "You look terrible." "Thanks." "I'm serious." I sat up slowly. "What do you want me to do? Pretend I'm fine?" "No," he replied calmly. "But hiding in this room won't save you." I rubbed my eyes tiredly. I don't even recognize myself anymore. Dad looked at me carefully before speaking. "Then maybe it's time to become somebody stronger." After he left, I stared at his words for a long time. That evening, my phone buzzed with another unknown number. I almost ignored it again. "Hello." "Wow," a female voice said. "You sound worse than I expected." I frowned slightly. "Who is this?" "Sarah." I sat upright immediately. Sarah and I attended university together years ago. We lost contact after graduation, but she had always been blunt, confident, and impossible to intimidate. "How did you get my number?" "Daniel gave it to me." "Why?" "Because he's tired of watching you disappear." I sighed. "I'm not in the mood for motivational speeches." "Good," she replied. "I hate motivational speeches." That answer almost made me smile. "Almost." Sarah continued, "I heard what happened. I don't want pity." "Perfect," she said. "Because I don't pity you." Her directness caught me off guard. "You don't?" "No. I think you're heartbroken, angry, humiliated, and emotionally exhausted. But I don't think you're weak." I stayed quiet. She spoke again. "One woman betraying you doesn't erase who you are. It feels like it does. Then stop measuring your value through somebody else's loyalty." I leaned back against the wall slowly. "You make it sound easy." "It's not easy," she replied. "That's why most people never heal correctly." We talked for nearly 2 hours that night. Not about revenge. Not about Emily. Mostly about pain. Real pain. The kind people hide because they fear looking broken. At one point, Sarah asked softly, "What hurts the most?" I answered honestly without thinking. That I gave everything to people who laughed at my trust. For several seconds she said nothing. Then she quietly replied, "That says something ugly about them, not you." Those words stayed in my mind long after the call ended. Over the next few days, Sarah kept contacting me. Sometimes we talked about random memories from university. Sometimes she forced me outside for coffee even when I resisted. "You need sunlight," she joked one afternoon. "I need a new life." "Exactly," she replied. "So start building one." During one conversation, I admitted something I hadn't even confessed to myself. I keep imagining revenge. Sarah looked at me calmly across the cafe table. "And then what?" I frowned. "What do you mean?" "Let's say you ruin their lives completely. Will that rebuild yours?" I opened my mouth then stopped. Because deep down I already knew the answer. No, it wouldn't. That night, I stood outside my parents' house watching the sunset fade across the sky. For weeks, I had focused only on betrayal, humiliation, and loss. But for the first time, another thought entered my mind. Maybe surviving this mattered more than punishing them. Maybe healing was harder than revenge. And maybe the man I used to be was gone forever. But that didn't mean my life had to end with him. Months passed slowly, but for the first time since the betrayal, my life no longer felt completely broken. Healing didn't arrive dramatically. It came quietly. One small decision at a time. I started using the savings from my overseas work to build a small logistics business. At first, the idea terrified me. I had spent years working for other people. Now I was risking everything on myself. Sarah refused to let me quit. "You survived heartbreak," she told me one morning while helping organize paperwork at my tiny office. "You can survive entrepreneurship." I laughed. "That should be a motivational poster." "It should," she replied proudly. The office itself was small and unimpressive. Cheap desk, old computers, weak coffee. But every inch of that place belonged to me. That mattered. One afternoon, while reviewing invoices, I groaned in frustration. Why is everything so complicated? Sarah looked up from her laptop. Because adulthood is a scam. I laughed harder than I had in months. She smiled slightly after hearing it. What? That sound, she said softly. You're finally starting to sound alive again. Her words stayed with me the entire day. The truth was, she had become one of the most important people in my life without me even realizing it. She never treated me like a victim. She listened when I needed honesty and challenged me when I started drowning in self-pity. Most importantly, she saw the version of me hidden beneath the pain. One evening after work, we sat outside a small restaurant eating takeout while watching traffic pass. Sarah nudged my shoulder lightly. You know what's different now? What? You stopped talking about Emily every 5 minutes. I blinked in surprise. She was right. For months, Emily's betrayal controlled every thought inside my head. Now entire days passed without me thinking about her once. That realization felt strangely freeing. A week later, I received unexpected news from Ryan, Jason's younger brother. He called me late at night. Hey, he said awkwardly. Hey. There was an uncomfortable silence before he finally spoke again. I wanted to apologize for my brother. You don't owe me anything. I know. But still. I leaned back in my chair quietly. How's Jason? Ryan laughed bitterly. Honestly? Falling apart. My attention sharpened immediately. What happened? He's drowning in debt, Ryan admitted. He spent money like crazy after you left. Expensive trips. Bars. Gambling sometimes. I frowned. Ryan continued, now he's behind on rent and fighting with Emily constantly. Part of me expected satisfaction hearing that. Instead, I mostly felt numb. He used to brag about stealing your life, Ryan muttered. Now he blames Emily for everything. I closed my eyes briefly. Somewhere deep inside, the old version of me would have enjoyed hearing this. But now it mostly sounded sad. Before ending the call, Ryan hesitated. She still talks about you sometimes. I didn't answer. After the call ended, I stared at my phone silently. Then another notification appeared. Emily. I almost laughed at the timing. Her message read, I know you probably hate me, but I'm really struggling. I locked the screen immediately. 10 minutes later, another message arrived. Please just talk to me once. I ignored that one too. Not because I wanted revenge. Because I finally understood something important. Not every wound deserves reopening. The following month, Sarah convinced me to attend a local business networking event downtown. I hate events like this, I complained while adjusting my jacket. You hate all social interaction lately. Correct. She rolled her eyes. You're still coming. The ballroom buzzed with conversation, music, and laughter. At first, I felt awkward standing among strangers discussing investments and business plans. Then something unexpected happened. People respected me. They listened carefully while I explained my company. They complimented my ideas. One investor even shook my hand firmly and said, You've built something impressive in a short time. For the first time in forever, I felt proud of myself again. Later that evening, Sarah and I stood near the refreshment table joking about terrible business buzzwords. Then her smile suddenly disappeared. What? I asked. She glanced toward the entrance carefully. I turned instinctively. Emily stood near the doorway frozen in place. Time slowed for a moment. She looked thinner than before. Tired, set, almost fragile. But the biggest difference was the expression on her face when she saw me. Not because I looked angry. Not because I looked heartbroken. Because I looked happy. Sarah quietly whispered, Do you want to leave? I looked at Emily one final time across the crowded room. Months ago, seeing her would have shattered me completely. Now I simply felt distant. No, I answered calmly. Emily's eyes filled with emotion while she watched Sarah laughing beside me. And in that silent moment across the ballroom, I realized something important. I no longer needed the woman who destroyed me to feel whole again. I thought the worst truths were already behind me. I was wrong. Everything changed the night Olivia called again. Her voice sounded nervous immediately. I need to tell you something important. I sat upright on my couch. What happened? It's about Jason. My stomach tightened instantly. Olivia took a shaky breath. The affair didn't happen naturally the way Emily described it. What do you mean? Jason manipulated her emotionally for years before things became physical. I frowned deeply. He constantly planted doubts about you while you were overseas, Olivia continued. Every time Emily felt lonely or upset, Jason made things worse. What kinds of things did he say? He told her you cared more about money than your marriage. He said you loved working abroad because it made you feel important. Anger rose slowly inside my chest. Olivia kept talking carefully. Whenever Emily defended you, Jason acted supportive at first. Then he'd slowly twist conversations until she questioned everything. I rubbed my forehead painfully. He made her emotionally dependent on him, Olivia whispered. For several seconds I couldn't speak. Then Olivia revealed something even worse. There's another reason I called. My chest tightened harder. What now? I recently learned Jason borrowed money using your name while you were overseas. I froze completely. What? He told several people you authorized him to handle financial matters for you. My pulse exploded instantly. How much money? I don't know exactly. But enough to damage your reputation with some people. I stood up so quickly my chair nearly fell backward. You're serious? Yes. Rage flooded through me so violently that my hands started shaking. Not just because of the money. Because even after stealing my marriage, Jason still found ways to steal pieces of my identity too. That same night, I drove directly to the bar where Ryan said Jason spent most evenings lately. The moment I walked inside, I spotted him laughing loudly with several men near the counter. Jason noticed me almost immediately. His smile faded. Well, he muttered sarcastically. Look who's here. I walked straight toward him. Outside. Now. One of his friends looked uncomfortable immediately. Maybe we should. Stay out of this, I snapped. Jason smirked arrogantly. You still angry? I grabbed his shirt before he could continue. Did you borrow money using my name? His expression changed instantly. Who told you that? So it's true. Jason shoved my hands away. Relax. Relax. I shouted. You ruined my reputation behind my back. People inside the bar started staring openly now. Jason rolled his eyes. It wasn't a big deal. How much? Why do you care now? I stepped closer dangerously. Answer me. He laughed bitterly. You always acted like you were better than everybody. The room fell silent. For years, I had never truly understood the hatred hidden inside him. Now I finally saw it clearly. You hated me this entire time, I said quietly. Jason's jaw tightened. You know what I hated? He snapped suddenly. Everybody worshipped you. I stared at him in disbelief. You were the hard-working guy. The loyal husband. The dependable friend. His voice grew louder with every sentence. People admired you constantly while I stood in your shadow. So you destroyed my life? You had everything. I earned everything. Jason laughed coldly. You think Emily stayed faithful because you were special? She was lonely and miserable. Anger exploded through me. You manipulated her. She wanted attention, he shouted back. I just gave it to her. At that exact moment, another voice interrupted us. Stop. Emily stood near the entrance trembling violently. I hadn't even realized she followed me there. Her eyes filled with tears while she stared at Jason. Tell me he's lying, she whispered. Jason looked irritated immediately. Emily, not now. You told me he stopped caring about me, she cried. You said he only loved money and success. Jason scoffed impatiently. Because it was true. No, I said quietly. It wasn't. Emily turned toward me with a devastated expression. Then she looked back at Jason slowly. You used me, she whispered. Jason laughed harshly. Oh please. You're acting innocent now? Tears streamed down her face harder. You made me believe my marriage was already dead. Jason crossed his arms. You made your own choices. Because I trusted you. And he trusted both of us, I said coldly. The shame on Emily's face became unbearable to watch. Meanwhile, people around us kept listening carefully. Jason finally noticed the growing attention and looked uncomfortable for the first time all night. One man near the counter frowned openly. Wait, you borrowed money using his identity? Another person muttered, that's seriously messed up. Jason cursed under his breath. Within minutes, whispers spread across the entire bar. By the next morning, the story spread even further. Jason's employer learned about the financial lies and ongoing drama surrounding him. Ryan called me later that afternoon sounding stunned. He got fired today. I closed my eyes quietly. And honestly? Ryan added bitterly. Most people aren't defending him anymore. After ending the call, I sat alone for a long time thinking about everything. Jason had spent years envying my life so deeply that he destroyed his own trying to steal it. And now, piece by piece, the truth was finally destroying him instead. Rain hammered against my apartment windows while I reviewed paperwork at the kitchen table. Thunder echoed outside, shaking the glass slightly. Then somebody knocked at my door. I frowned at the clock. Almost midnight. When I opened the door, my entire body froze. Emily stood outside completely soaked from the storm. Her hair clung to her face and her eyes looked swollen from crying. For several seconds neither of us spoke. Finally she whispered, "Can I come in?" I hesitated. Part of me wanted to close the door immediately. Another part still remembered loving her more than anyone else in the world. I stepped aside silently. Emily entered slowly, shivering from the cold rain. I handed her a towel without speaking. "Thank you," she whispered. I leaned against the kitchen counter while she dried her face nervously. "What are you doing here?" Her hands trembled slightly around the towel. "Jason moved out 2 weeks ago." I stayed silent. "He blamed me for everything after he lost his job," she continued quietly. "We fought constantly." "That doesn't surprise me." Emily lowered her eyes. "I deserve that." Thunder rumbled outside again. Finally she looked directly at me, and the pain in her expression almost hurt to witness. "I destroyed my life." I crossed my arms carefully. "You destroyed our marriage." Tears filled her eyes instantly. "I know." For a moment, the apartment became painfully quiet except for the sound of rain outside. Then Emily whispered the words I already expected. "Leaving you was the biggest mistake of my life." I looked away toward the window. Months ago, hearing that would have healed something inside me instantly. Now it mostly felt tragic. Emily stepped closer slowly. "When you were overseas, I felt lonely and abandoned," she admitted. "Jason gave me attention every time I felt weak." I said nothing. "I confused attention with love," she continued through tears. "By the time I realized the difference, I had already destroyed everything." I closed my eyes briefly. Because part of me still remembered the woman who once held my hand at the airport crying while promising to wait for me forever. That memory still existed inside me no matter how much pain followed afterward. Emily's voice cracked again. "You loved me honestly." "Yes," I answered quietly. "And I betrayed that love." "Yes." She wiped tears from her cheeks desperately. "I hate myself for what I became." I studied her silently. For the first time since the affair, I truly saw how broken she looked. Not manipulative. Not defensive. Just devastated. Emily stepped even closer. "Please," she whispered. "Give me another chance." My chest tightened painfully. Because some small part of me still wished life had unfolded differently. Still wished we could return to the version of ourselves before betrayal poisoned everything. But reality didn't work that way. I spoke carefully, choosing every word slowly. "I forgave you a long time ago." Emily looked shocked. "You did?" "Yes." Carrying hatred was destroying me. Hope flickered briefly across her face. Then I quietly continued. "But forgiveness and trust are different things." Her expression collapsed instantly. "I can change," she cried softly. "I believe you probably can." "Then why can't we fix this?" I looked directly into her tear-filled eyes. "Because every time I look at you, I remember the night my entire world fell apart." Emily covered her mouth while sobbing. "I'm sorry," she whispered repeatedly. "I'm so sorry." I nodded slowly. "I know you are." She grabbed my hand desperately. "Please don't let this be the end." I gently pulled my hand away. It already ended a long time ago. The pain on her face nearly broke me. Not because I wanted her back. Because once upon a time, I would have done anything to protect her from suffering. Now I couldn't save either of us. Emily cried openly for several more seconds before finally walking toward the door. When she opened it, cold rain and wind rushed inside immediately. She turned back one last time. "I really did love you," she whispered. I believed she meant it. And somehow that truth made everything even sadder. "Goodbye, Emily," I said softly. Then she stepped back into the storm crying while I stood silently in the doorway watching the woman I once planned my entire future around disappear into the rain. And deep inside, I finally understood that some broken things could never be repaired again. Rain hammered against my apartment windows while I reviewed paperwork at the kitchen table. Thunder echoed outside, shaking the glass slightly. Then somebody knocked at my door. I frowned at the clock. Almost midnight. When I opened the door, my entire body froze. Emily stood outside completely soaked from the storm. Her hair clung to her face and her eyes looked swollen from crying. For several seconds neither of us spoke. Finally she whispered, "Can I come in?" I hesitated. Part of me wanted to close the door immediately. Another part still remembered loving her more than anyone else in the world. I stepped aside silently. Emily entered slowly, shivering from the cold rain. I handed her a towel without speaking. "Thank you," she whispered. I leaned against the kitchen counter while she dried her face nervously. "What are you doing here?" Her hands trembled slightly around the towel. "Jason moved out 2 weeks ago." I stayed silent. "He blamed me for everything after he lost his job," she continued quietly. "We fought constantly." "That doesn't surprise me." Emily lowered her eyes. "I deserve that." Thunder rumbled outside again. Finally she looked directly at me, and the pain in her expression almost hurt to witness. "I destroyed my life." I crossed my arms carefully. "You destroyed our marriage." Tears filled her eyes instantly. "I know." For a moment, the apartment became painfully quiet except for the sound of rain outside. Then Emily whispered the words I already expected. "Leaving you was the biggest mistake of my life." I looked away toward the window. Months ago, hearing that would have healed something inside me instantly. Now it mostly felt tragic. Emily stepped closer slowly. "When you were overseas, I felt lonely and abandoned," she admitted. "Jason gave me attention every time I felt weak." I said nothing. "I confused attention with love," she continued through tears. "By the time I realized the difference, I had already destroyed everything." I closed my eyes briefly. Because part of me still remembered the woman who once held my hand at the airport crying while promising to wait for me forever. That memory still existed inside me no matter how much pain followed afterward. Emily's voice cracked again. "You loved me honestly." "Yes," I answered quietly. "And I betrayed that love." "Yes." She wiped tears from her cheeks desperately. "I hate myself for what I became." I studied her silently. For the first time since the affair, I truly saw how broken she looked. Not manipulative. Not defensive. Just devastated. Emily stepped even closer. "Please," she whispered. "Give me another chance." My chest tightened painfully. Because some small part of me still wished life had unfolded differently. Still wished we could return to the version of ourselves before betrayal poisoned everything. But reality didn't work that way. I spoke carefully, choosing every word slowly. "I forgave you a long time ago." Emily looked shocked. "You did?" "Yes." Carrying hatred was destroying me. Hope flickered briefly across her face. Then I quietly continued. "But forgiveness and trust are different things." Her expression collapsed instantly. "I can change," she cried softly. "I believe you probably can." "Then why can't we fix this?" I looked directly into her tear-filled eyes. "Because every time I look at you, I remember the night my entire world fell apart." Emily covered her mouth while sobbing. "I'm sorry," she whispered repeatedly. "I'm so sorry." I nodded slowly. "I know you are." She grabbed my hand desperately. "Please don't let this be the end." I gently pulled my hand away. It already ended a long time ago. The pain on her face nearly broke me. Not because I wanted her back. Because once upon a time, I would have done anything to protect her from suffering. Now I couldn't save either of us. Emily cried openly for several more seconds before finally walking toward the door. When she opened it, cold rain and wind rushed inside immediately. She turned back one last time. "I really did love you," she whispered. I believed she meant it. And somehow that truth made everything even sadder. "Goodbye, Emily," I said softly. Then she stepped back into the storm crying while I stood silently in the doorway watching the woman I once planned my entire future around disappear into the rain. And deep inside, I finally understood that some broken things could never be repaired again. I stood outside the old house for nearly 5 minutes before finding the courage to unlock the door. The realtor had already finalized the sale paperwork earlier that morning. By tomorrow, the house would belong to strangers. My house keys felt strangely heavy in my hand. When I finally stepped inside, silence greeted me immediately. No furniture. No pictures. No laughter. Just empty rooms carrying ghosts of the life I once believed would last forever. I closed the door behind me slowly and walked into the living room. "This used to feel like home," I whispered to myself. The sound of my own voice echoed through the empty space. For a moment, memories crashed into me so hard that I almost lost my balance. Emily asleep on the couch during movie nights. Christmas decorations near the fireplace. Jason sitting at the dining table laughing with me like a brother. That last memory still hurt the most sometimes. Not because I missed him. Because betrayal always feels uglier when it wears the face of somebody you trusted completely. I walked toward the kitchen slowly, trailing my fingers across the counter. I remembered Emily dancing here once while cooking dinner. "You're terrible at singing," I teased her that night. "I'm amazing actually," she argued while laughing. "Neighbors might call the police." She threw a spoon at me. Back then, I truly believed moments like that would last forever. Now they existed only inside memory. I opened one of the empty cabinets and laughed quietly to myself. Funny how fast forever disappears. My phone buzzed suddenly. Sarah. Did you make it there okay? She asked after I answered. Yeah. You sound strange. I forgot how many memories this place carries. Her voice softened immediately. Do you want me to come now? I looked around the silent house again. Part of me wanted to stay alone with the past a little longer. No, I replied gently. Just give me another hour. Okay. Don't drown in nostalgia without me. I smiled faintly. I'll try. After ending the call, I walked upstairs slowly. Every step felt familiar. Painfully familiar. When I reached the bedroom doorway, I stopped completely. This room changed my life forever. I could still remember opening that door. Still remember the shock crushing my chest. Still remember feeling my entire future collapse in one horrifying second. For a long moment, I simply stood there breathing quietly. Then I walked inside. The room looked smaller now somehow. Less powerful. Maybe because time finally weakened the nightmare attached to it. I sat carefully on the edge of the empty floor and stared at the wall where our wedding photo once hung. I really loved you, I whispered into the silence. And despite everything that happened afterward, that truth still mattered. People talk about heartbreak like love suddenly becomes fake after betrayal. But that wasn't true. What I felt for Emily had been real. Honest. That's why losing it nearly destroyed me. I leaned my head back against the wall and closed my eyes. For years, I blamed myself constantly. Maybe I worked too much. Maybe I ignored warning signs. Maybe I trusted too blindly. But eventually I learned something important. Loving somebody sincerely is never the mistake. The mistake is losing yourself completely while doing it. A soft knock downstairs interrupted my thoughts. Sarah. I walked down and opened the door. She smiled gently while holding 2 coffee cups. You looked like somebody attending his own funeral. Feels a little like that. She stepped inside slowly and glanced around the empty living room. Wow, she whispered. It's strange seeing it like this. Yeah. She handed me a coffee before sitting beside one of the moving boxes. For several minutes we packed quietly together. Unlike most people, Sarah never forced conversations when silence felt necessary. Eventually she looked at me carefully. How are you really doing? I thought about the question honestly. Sad, I admitted. But peaceful too. That's healthier than pretending nothing hurts. I nodded slowly. The scars will probably always exist. Sarah sealed another box gently. Scars aren't always bad. I raised an eyebrow. They prove you survived something difficult. Her words settled deeply inside me. Together, we packed books, kitchen supplies, and old decorations into boxes until sunset painted orange light across the empty walls. Then, while cleaning the hallway closet, I found something hidden behind an old shelf. A photograph. My chest tightened immediately. It was a picture from years ago. Emily and I stood together outside this same house on the day we bought it. She held my arm proudly while both of us smiled at the camera like two people completely certain about their future. Sarah noticed my expression. You okay? I stared at the photo quietly. A younger version of myself smiled back from the picture. Naive. Hopeful. Completely in love. For several seconds I considered tearing it apart. Maybe the old version of me would have. But hatred no longer lived inside me the same way. That was a happy day, I said softly. Sarah stepped closer beside me. Some memories can stay beautiful even if the ending wasn't. I looked at her gratefully. Then I carefully placed the photograph inside one of the boxes instead of destroying it. Not because I wanted the past back. Because denying every good memory would mean denying part of my own life too. Night fell completely by the time we carried the final box outside. I returned to the front doorway one last time while Sarah waited near the car. The empty house stood silent behind me. This place witnessed love, betrayal, dreams, pain, growth. And somehow, despite everything, I no longer hated it. I reached for the light switch slowly. Then I took one final look around before stepping outside and closing the front door forever. Not just on the house, but on the man I used to be.